And if you want to come and play your open attacking football, that's fine. But I think that Everton will be quite happy with that, to have a bit more space from a side who comes to, as I say, go quite gung-ho at times and leave us with a little bit of space to pick off, and that might play into our hands a little bit. Mike Richards from the Unholy Trinity Everton podcast. Looking ahead to tomorrow's game against yourselves, Tottenham Hotspur. Historically, not a great fixture for ourselves. In terms of what it's like to be an Everton fan at the moment, obviously we've had a rough few years, and just recently had the takeover confirmed by the Freaking Group, which is fantastic. It draws a line under the financial issues that we were having under Farhad Moshiri, and obviously we were very much living from on a month-by-month basis, it seemed at times. So to have that confirmed and have new owners in place, it means that we can certainly look forward off the field, which is a good thing. Obviously on the field, a little bit different. We're still struggling, of course. We've had managerial change as well, which everybody will be well aware of, which I'll come on to shortly. But as a fan base, it's been tricky. It's still difficult now. As I say, we need to start winning games of football, and hopefully that comes on Sunday against yourselves. Season so far, like I say, very, very difficult. Only 3 wins so far this season in a league, which is very, very poor. And that's where we are, why we are where we are. And we can't seem to string together too many good results. Obviously, we got that win over Wolves maybe 6 weeks ago. Got 3 decent draws against obviously good sides in Chelsea, Arsenal and Manchester City. But it's been very much a grind this season, and I think a lot of Everton fans, myself included, thought that we would see a bit more progression on the field this season. I feel that the squad is a bit more balanced, there's a bit more quality in there, but we're not scoring goals, as it's been shown already. I think 12 out of our 20 games we haven't scored, which is really, really poor. So if you don't score goals, you can't win games of football. So it even showed against Aston Villa last week, midweek game. We had a few chances here and there, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin being the main man in front of goal, he's devoid of confidence, as are a fair few others, and found it very difficult, as he has for the majority of this season, to score goals. So it's been a really, really tough opening half of the season for ourselves. Standout performers, mainly, you look at Iliman Ndiaye, who's come in and done a good job. He's a player who's got fabulous technical ability. He's got great feet. He's got good pace. He's certainly our biggest threat, but I think sides know that now. So you tend to see sides put 2 men on him quite often. So if you nullify him, it tends to nullify our threat in the final third. But he's been a standout. Ashley Young has probably been one of our better players this season, consistent, playing at right back, put in some really solid performances there. Ariel Mangala, who's coming from Lyon on loan in centre midfield, has also done well since he's come in, and somebody who we do rely on in the middle of the park, just to do the simple things, but he's a nice footballer as well. Outside of that, there hasn't been many standout performers or performances over the course of the season, and we really need to improve, as I say, start winning games and start to look more comfortable in games as well, because the performances, especially under Sean Dyche, obviously the managerial changes only just happened, but especially under him, they just weren't good enough, and that's got to change. Brings me on to Sean Dyche, of course, sacked very, very recently, or departed the club, however you want to look at it. It was very much him who told the new owners that he felt he had taken the club as far as he could which was a surprise to them. I think they were keen on backing him. They want a bit of stability and they want to assess things, or wanted to, over the remaining months of the season. He sort of threw the towel in, so to speak, and the club then went out and they brought back David Moyes. So, I mean, Sean Dyche, in my opinion, we as a podcast, as an individual, I'd probably back Sean Dyche more and for longer than most, understanding the incredible issues and the difficult circumstances he's been operating under. You go back to last season with those 2 points deductions, the fact that we had financial uncertainty for so long. He was doing many jobs, whether it be a football manager, whether it be some kind of communication manager. He's having to deal with those questions week in, week out around ownership issues and things like that. It hasn't been easy, and those first 18 months I thought he conducted himself particularly well, but this season's been disappointing. And when you can't get a tune out of the players, and it just wasn't working, it was quite obvious for everybody probably outside of our fan base to see, but even more so for within our fan base. The change had to be made, and as I say, my patience had worn thin, and I believed that the change was right at that particular time. And in comes David Moyes, and the reaction, I think, has been generally positive. There's still a few fans who were never too happy with the way that he left the club, the fact that his contract was run down. Everton got no compensation. He then decided to get Leighton Baines and Mauro Fellaini on the cheap for Manchester United. And also there was a little bit of needle between the fans and David Moyes, which caused a few headlines as well. So I think some fans still look back at that. I think it's important to draw a line in the sand, and time's a great healer, isn't it? And I feel that most fans are satisfied with the appointment. They feel that Moyes is a fairly safe pair of hands, to be honest. Somebody that we can trust to hopefully get us out of the situation that we find ourselves in. Obviously, the owners have changed hands recently, and that's been a big change for the club. And they're the ones who ultimately made the decision to go with David Moyes. And I think as a fan base, we're happy about the fact that they are at the helm now. As I mentioned earlier, the stability it brings us financially is great. Obviously, they're also the owners of Roma in Italy. They obviously got them a trophy fairly early on in their tenure with Jose Mourinho at the helm, and he won the first ever Europa Conference League. So they brought a bit of success there. They're certainly not backwards and coming forwards when it comes to managerial change. They have high standards, but they understand obviously what this football club's all about. Obviously, the stadium is almost ready to go. There's a lot to be said about this football club going forward, and there's a lot of opportunities coming our way. And I think the new owners see that, and obviously we're delighted that they are now in place, and we expect that, given time and given the right investments, making sure that we don't just do what we did previously under Farhad Moshiri and waste a lot of money, that if things are done correctly, then this can be a real success, this takeover, as I say, especially with what's on the horizon when we go into next season. I'll come back to obviously our fabulous new stadium shortly, but obviously David Moyes was in the dugout for the first time on Wednesday night against Aston Villa. As a fan, you know yourselves, when you make a change of manager, there's always a little bit of fever pitch, and you go to the ground with a lot more hope and even more expectation that you're going to win a game of football. It wasn't to be. Obviously, Villa won the game by a 1-0, and it was a game that, for me, we deserve something from. It was sloppy mistakes again that cost us. For me, again, there was a Stonewall penalty turned down. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, an absolute sitter late on in the game as well, which would have seen us get a point. We created a few chances as well, especially in that first half. So you started to see a few little tweaks that David Moyes had made in the couple of days that he'd actually been with the players. That's important to remember that he literally had 2 days with the players before that game, so we couldn't expect too much because he's still working with the same set of players, and time was short before that game. But I expect now, after another few days with the players, he's been there for, I say, about a week or so. But as we go into the game tomorrow, a few more of his ideas are probably starting to creep in. The players are maybe a bit more receptive now, understanding a little bit more. So on Wednesday it was hard for him to come in and make these wholesale changes and make us look like a totally different side. But hopefully that will come. Hopefully a couple of transfers in this window will help. But obviously it will take a little bit of time. But we need to, as I say, we need to pick up some wins. Otherwise, we're going to keep ourselves down where we are. And it's only so long that your luck will last for. We're seeing all the sides down there at the moment unable to win a game of football. So anyone that does, it means a hell of a lot and pulls you away straight away. So hopefully, as I say, that can come in tomorrow's game. In terms of yourselves, obviously as an Everton fan and somebody who's obviously a neutral, I spoke last season, obviously on the same show, and very much felt that with obviously Postecoglou in charge and the brand of football he had you play. And when it worked, it was fabulous, wasn't it? But when it didn't work, it was a disaster, which we'd seen quite often. Obviously, we came to yourselves early this season. We got absolutely annihilated by 4-0. So obviously, you think at that point Spurs are going to go on and being in around those European places, maybe pushing top 4 again and getting in amongst those sides. Hasn't been the case. Obviously, Spurs are struggling massively. Injuries have probably played a big part in that. I think losing your two main centre halves for large portions of the season so far is probably one of the major reasons why. I don't know if your manager's lost a little bit of the good faith of the fans. I'm not sure, but obviously you'll know yourselves. There's only so often you can constantly change manager. It doesn't. I think all managers need that time. And he seems to talk well. He seems to obviously have his own ideas, and he seems to be very, very happy to stick to them. So maybe from your perspective, I don't know, you might look at it and think that he needs to be a bit more balanced at times, maybe a little bit more proactive in his approach in terms of changing things during the game and look to consolidate when you go ahead as opposed to looking to go further ahead and being wide open. But it's certainly a surprise that Spurs are where they are. But still quality players throughout the squad, of course. The usual names that we look at that we feared, like Son, for example, is certainly one. I know Richarlison's back and he got a few minutes, didn't he, against Arsenal the other day. We know what he can do. Obviously came to Goodison Park and showed us exactly what he can do against us last season. So always a danger, always a threat. James Maddison's another one. Technically a very, very good footballer. So there's certainly a few players there that we've got to be wary of. But I think from our perspective, we'll look at your back four and centre halves in particular and think, that's where we can get at Spurs. And if you want to come and play your open attacking football, that's fine. But I think that Everton will be quite happy with that, to have a bit more space from a side who comes to, as I say, go quite gung-ho at times and leave us with a little bit of space to pick off, and that might play into our hands a little bit. But I mean, in terms of the surprise, it is certainly a surprise to see yourselves down there. Not so much us being where we are. However, I still feel that we've underperformed. I feel that we're not sort of a bottom 4, bottom 5 side. I think we should be a bit higher than that. But results, obviously, they dictate where you are on the table, and we certainly can't argue with where we are because it's dictated by performances, by results, and that's where we are. But for yourselves in particular, very, very, very difficult season so far, I think, and I think that your fan base will not be too pleased with how things are going. In terms of favourite moments from Everton-Spurs games in the past, I always go back to the game where Everton won by 2-1 with 2 late goals from Steven Pienaar and Nikita Jelavic. That's always a favourite of mine. Obviously, being on in the jaws of defeat and snatching it and winning the game, you can never beat that kind of moment in football when you score a stoppage time winner. That was fabulous. I always enjoyed the game, obviously, during the COVID years. Carlo Ancelotti in the dugout, Dominic Calvert-Lewin header, 1-0 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Another fabulous moment as well. But obviously, my favourite one's got to be the FA Cup semi-final at Ellen Road in '95. Everton winning the game by 4-1. That's a massive standout. That's a game we look back on with great fondness. the only goal we conceded in the whole FA Cup run was that particular game with the Klinsmann penalty. So it's one that lives long in the memory. Obviously, with Abakachi bringing himself on as a substitute, and the fact we had 3 sides at the ground, and the fact we went on to win the FA Cup that season as well. So that was probably my standout moments over the years in terms of the games with yourselves. Back to us and back to our stadium. Obviously, Everton Stadium is almost ready to go. Fabulous! What a fabulous spectacle it is, and I'm sure when you hopefully we're a Premier League side next season, you come down, you see it up close and personal, you will understand how amazing the stadium is. Nothing like it in this country. Nothing like it. I mean, your stadium is fabulous. Currently the best stadium in the Premier League, of course. Bit more of a multi-purpose stadium, I would say. Obviously, you've got the NFL there. Our stadium's a football stadium, pure and simple. It's not designed for NFL. The stands are on top of the pitch like Goodison Park is. It's the big south stand, the big home end is as steep as a stand is allowed according to regulations. It's basically Goodison Park on steroids. And you'll understand that, I think, when you get down there. Fabulous arena, fabulous setting on the banks of the River Mersey there. It'll be cold in the winter, that's for sure. But it's going to be a game changer for our football club, and myself personally, I'm lucky enough to be going to the first test event on the 17th of February, so we'll look forward to that. They've got the big home end open for that particular event, which is an under-18s game from what I understand. So it's certainly becoming very, very real now. We've just started to pick our season ticket seats as well. So in a few months' time, when we're all in there, hopefully for the first friendly, the first obviously pre-season friendly, the first game of next season, where fans will really, really appreciate what an absolutely fabulous spectacle the stadium is. As from an architectural point of view, it's unbelievable. And as I say, when you get down there, you'll see that a mixture of old and new, history, modern. There's just so much to admire from the stadium. So we look forward to getting down there, and it's certainly something which I feel that it's going to be a game changer for our football club, that's for sure. In terms of obviously the game tomorrow, predicted lineup and score prediction. First of all, I'm going to say Everton are going to win the game. I don't know why I feel like that. I don't think we've shown a great deal in recent weeks to suggest that, but I think with the change of manager, with him having a bit more time with the side, with the way that you play, the form that you're in, I've got a bit of confidence that we can win the game. So I'm going to say Everton with a 2-1 win. In terms of the side that David Moyes will pick, Jordan Pickford picks himself, of course. 2 centre-halves in James Tarkowski and Zara Branthwaite picked themselves, and he'll probably go with Mikalenko at left back and Ashley Young at right back. 2 centre mids with Orel Mangala and Idrissa Gana Gueye. On the left hand side would probably be Iliman Ndiaye. On the right hand side I go for Jesper Lindström. He did start Harrison against Aston Villa, but he had the particularly poor game. In the number 10 role, Decore's been playing there. I think he was poor again against Aston Villa. I'd like to see the manager go for Harrison Armstrong, the young kid, 17 years of age. Bit of a breakthrough season for him this year. Had a few minutes here and there. Started in the cup against Peterborough, obviously last week. So he's somebody that David Moyes has spoken highly of since he's come in. He's a player the club think highly of as well. So I'd love to see him get the nod at the number 10. I think that'll give the crowd a bit of a lift as well. And it's always great when you have one of your younger players coming through the academy and getting some first team minutes playing in the Premier League. And I think I'd like to see that, because the core guy, he is what he is, and it's very much about his legs and the energy that he possesses, and his closing down play is fairly good. But his technical aspect in terms of actually passing the ball 10 yards and what have you, and even at times his finish is not particularly good. So I think we could see a change there as well. I think the manager will offer Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front. Had a really poor season so far. Missed a few chances against Aston Villa, but the manager does speak in a manner that he feels that he's got faith in him. So I think we'll see him ahead of Beto in terms of the starting lineup. Fingers crossed for a good game, of course. We need to win. I'm sure you'll say the same yourselves. Slightly different predicament to ourselves, but I'm sure you want to go there and get the 3 points. Your last trip's to Goodison Park, assuming that there's no cup game in the near future. So it's I think it's officially retro day. The club have coined it. Very much a push on wearing your old shirt and things like that. So obviously, if you come into the game, try and get involved with that as well. Obviously, enjoy the game, but fingers crossed for 3 points for Everton. I'll catch you soon.